The Life of David Livingston, Part 36. Upon this very delicate subject, the Herald itself editorially remarks, on the question of Livingston having received the supplies sent to him by his friends in England, these letters will throw a startling light. The careless theft and general mismanagement which overtook the stores forwarded by the British consulate at Zanzibar usually wasted and frittered these almost entirely away before they had time to reach him. This cannot be better stated than in the Herald commander's words. Quote, your correspondent begs to inform his friends that the Herald expedition found him turned back from his explorations when on the eve of being terminated thoroughly by the very men sent to him by the British consulate, that the expedition found him sitting down at Ujiji, utterly destitute, robbed by his very men sent by the British consulate at Zanzibar with his caravan, that the Herald expedition escorted him to Unyanyembe only in time to save his last stock of goods, for they were rapidly being made away with by the very men entrusted by the British consulate with the last lot of goods. That it was only by accident that your correspondent saw a packet of letters addressed to Livingston, and so forcibly took one of Livingston's men to carry the letters to his employer. The commander of the search expedition supplied Dr. Livingston with such supplies as he could command, in which were several bales of mixed cloths, about 1,000 pounds of assorted beads. All this is African money, a large quantity of brass wire, a portable boat, revolvers, carbines, and ammunition, and thus Mr. Stanley was ready to depart for the sea-coast. Bidding the great explorer farewell, he left Kwahara on March 14, 1872, bending his course toward Zanzibar by the usual caravan track. At Zanzibar, he forwarded men and means to the explorer of whom he had learned to think so highly, by the aid of which he has doubtless been able to make his departure from Unyanyembe with confident anticipation of success. And so we may be sure the Iron Man is wending his way on foot through the wilds of Africa, inflexibly determined upon a complete solution to the great geographical problem of the times. Meanwhile, the chief of the successful search expedition discharged his men at Zanzibar and by Bombay, thence to Aden. Wait, what is this? Meanwhile, the chief of the successful search expedition discharged his men at Zanzibar and by Bombay, thence to Aden in southwestern Arabia. The Red Sea and the Suez Canal found his rapid way to abodes of those races of civilized men who had been astonished and grateful by the summary of the remarkable success of his enterprise which had preceded him. Is that about Stanley or Livingston, or who are they talking about? As far as who went to Aden and Arabia and the Suez, and who was that? So the synopsis of the chapter says, neglect of Livingston by the British consulate at Zanzibar, departure of the explorer for the interior, and of Mr. Stanley for Europe. So it must be Stanley went to Europe by way of the Red Sea and Bombay and stuff. So that doesn't seem like a direct route, but and Livingston went into the interior of Africa, I guess. Yeah. Chapter 15. When Mr. Stanley bade goodbye to Dr. Livingston in Yembe, the explorer entrusted to the care of the correspondent dispatches to the government, his journal addressed to his daughter, and copies of letters to which the former messengers had been robbed. The letter, old and new, to the representative of the British government at Zanzibar, Dr. Kirk, and to different members of the British cabinet were allowed to be published. They give a full account of Dr. Livingston's explorations among the supposed true sources of the Nile and abundantly establish the complete success of the Herald search expedition. The letters to the British authorities, thus sent to the press August 1872, through the courtesy of Earl Granville, were: number 1, a letter from Dr. Livingston to Lord Stanley under the date of 1870, 2 letters of November to Lord Clarendon, and number 3, a letter on November 14, 1871 to Earl Granville. Number 4, letter of October to Dr. Kurt, British consul at Zanzibar, and number 5, letter of December 1871 to Earl Granville, and number 6, letter of February 20, 1872 to Earl Granville again. The first of these dispatches to the government is from Bambar, Manyeme country, say about 150 miles west of Ujiji, on November 1870, addressed to Lord Stanley, Secretary of the State for Foreign Affairs. In this dispatch, much is contained which Dr. Livingston orally related to Mr. Stanley of the Herald, and which has already appeared in this work. The country of the Manyeme, reputed cannibals, is described generally thus. Quote, the country is extremely beautiful, but difficult to travel over. The mountains are light gray granite, stand like islands in new red sandstone, and mountain and valley are all clad with a mantle of different shades of green. The vegetation is indescribably rank through the grass, if grass it can be called, which is all over half an inch in diameter in the stalk and from 10 to 12 feet high. Nothing but elephants can walk. The leaves of this megatherium grass are armed with minute spikes, which, as we worm our way along elephant walks, rub disagreeably on the side of the face where the gun is held, and the hand is made sore by fending it off the other side of fending it off the other side of hours. Oh, 4 hours. The rains were fairly set in by November, and in the mornings or after a shower, these leaves were loaded with a moisture which wet us to the bone. The valleys are deep, undulating, and innumerable dells have to be crossed. There may be only a thread of water at the bottom, but the mud, mire, or glour is grievous. 30 or 40 yards of the path on each side of the stream are worked by the feet of passengers into an adhesive compound. By placing a foot on each side of the narrow way, one may waddle at a distance along, but the rank crop of grasses, gingers, and brushes cannot spare the few inches of soil required for the side of the foot, and down he comes into the slough. The path often runs along the bed of the rivulet for 60 or more yards, as if he were the first to cut it out when that distance seeking for a part of the forest less dense for his axe. In other cases, the malu palm, from which here is, just as in Madagascar, grass cloth is woven and called by the same name, lamba, has taken possession of the valley, and the leaf stalks, as thick as a strong man's arm, fall off and block up all passages, save by a path made and mixed by the feet of elephants and buffaloes. The slough therein is grown compelling. The slough therein is grown compelling and deep. Hyphenated. Grown compelling and deep.